Good morning and welcome to the Association of United States Army's Coffee Series featuring Sergeant Major of the Army, Michael Weimer. I'm Lori Wolf, Deputy Director of Meetings, and it's great to have you here today. First, thank you to our 4-star sponsors, General Dynamics and Leonardo DRS, and our 2-star sponsors, Leidos and Northrop Grumman. We cannot thank them enough for their continued support of AUSA over the years. We appreciate the presence of general officers and command sergeants majors joining us this morning. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge congressional staff with us today. Your efforts on behalf of Army families, soldiers, and the greater Army is greatly appreciated. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce AUSA's Vice President of NCO and Soldier Programs, SMA Dan Daly. Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Lori. And first, I just want to start off. It is awesome to see this many soldiers in the room this morning.
It's really good.
We are the Association of the United States Army, so it's good when we have actually Army in the room. Now, not to take anything away from our corporate partners, so thank you for being here as well. And I have the honor this morning of introducing, and I'll give a short bio. I know he doesn't want me to do too much, of our 17th Sergeant Major of the Army. So he actually hails, which is awesome, from the Army itself, because he grew up in the Army, as an Army family, right?
I did.
And then he became a permanent resident of the Army in 1993 when he enlisted, right? And shortly thereafter, he went to Special Forces Selection and earned his Green Beret. He served from team member all the way through Command Sergeant Major in the 7th Special Forces Group and over 20 years in Special Mission Units. And before he became the Sergeant Major of the Army, he was the United States Army Special Operations Command Sergeant Major. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and privilege to welcome to the AUSA Coffee Series the 17th Sergeant Major of the Army, SMA Michael Weimer.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure you ever get used to that, to be honest with you. It's probably a good thing. Nobody ever starts their career off thinking this is where you're going to end up being.
And to be also mentioned, we have Mrs. Weimer here this morning. So, ma'am, thank you for accompanying your husband today. After our coffee series, they're going to learn more about AUSA from our staff and faculty here at AUSA. So, thanks for being with us, SMA.
No, it's an honor.
Yeah. So let's kick it off. I know our audience is going to have some questions, but I figured we'll start with something that's really important and something that's on the top of your priority list, and that's called service SMA. Tell us, what does that mean to you, and why it's so important, and how these people in industry and our partners in America can help.
Yeah, so wow, just what a diverse group sitting here in this room. So thanks to AUSA. I think sometimes we forget the intrinsic motivation that still lies within you, even when you take this uniform off. And here you are, just still giving back. So a big thanks to you for what you do. And sorry it took so long to get down here, but the job's a bit of a grind. We have a few things going on, and Congress asked us to come testify early in January, so we've been a little busy. But no, the call to service. Yeah, I mean, you started off with my bio, so I guess I can start there. It's like, it's really all I know. And I really have to give that to my grandfather. I have to give that to my parents. I'm 3rd generation. Our youngest is on the journey to be 4th generation. But the call to service is really it's bigger than even putting the uniform on, right? It's just the call to serve something bigger than yourself. And I think coming out of COVID, and I hate giving COVID much credit, but we saw a strain on healthcare. We saw a strain on law enforcement, fire departments, EMT, just all of it, even teachers, to be honest with you. And so really the call to service that I like to focus on is really, it starts there, and it's really a call to the nation. Now I'm in the Army, so I'm a little biased. I tend to point people towards the Army recruiter because I do think we're pretty special, and we do have a ton to offer you. But I wouldn't be myself if I didn't remind everybody the first thing we have to offer you is the opportunity to serve your country, and then we've got college money and all the other things that come with it. But because we all join for a little bit of a different reason, but I think we all end up staying for the mission, which is why I start with the oath we take, and then the people.
Yeah. So Sergeant, let's take that call to service and right into the next question. It's no secret we've had troubles with recruiting, not just in the Army, across all the services. Just recently, there was an article in the Early Bird about, that we continue to have some challenges with this. But the Army's done some restructuring of recruiting command, right, to help get after this issue, right? Can you talk about that and possibly give us an update on where we are with recruiting? Where do you think we're headed in the future?
Absolutely. So we've come a long way in this, right? Our recruiting woes didn't happen overnight. This has been a multi-year, almost decade plus long journey to get where we are right now. 50-year all volunteer Army. That's no small thing. That's a significant thing, and we have a bunch of our allies and partners in the room with us that know what that means. I mean, it's really special. We take it for granted, but the secretary and the chief, through some tough work, the chief while he was the vice, now as the chief himself, kind of seeing it through. But the decision to, I call, upgun recruiting command, and to really professionalize how we recruit people, really professionalize the beginning of talent management, which is how do we ensure America remembers who their Army is. We forget post 9/11, before 9/11, the gates were open. There were no gates. That's why I usually say it that way. There were no fences. America just drove on our installations. And so we're having to really rethink how we tell our story and remind people that we're your Army. Liberty, Bragg, Pryor is a perfect example. You used to drive right through Bragg, and now you have to drive around it. And even the local community there, without us coming out of the installation, they really don't know what's going on behind the fence. And so I think that's some of what we have going on, Dan. But with the 3-star command becoming a 3-star command, direct report to the secretary and the chief, and the innovation division that's really going to drive modernizing how we recruit people, I think those are going to be what see us turn this around. And I'm confident we will.
It's something that we have to do.
Well, we don't have a choice. I mean, this is something we have to figure out.
That's right. SMA, the chief was here just a couple of weeks ago, General Brown, and delivered some powerful remarks. One of the things he talked about was your 4 focus areas together. Warfighting, delivering combat-ready forces, transforming the force, and strengthening the profession of arms. Can you talk about that and the impact you and the chief are trying to make across the force?
So I got to give SMA Gritson a shout out. His desire to ensure I had a phenomenal handover and had some serious transition time was priceless. And so 2 May, when I showed up at the Pentagon and I met with the transition team for the first time, is when I heard about the 4 focus areas. And I immediately just smiled. Because when you really, especially for those of us in uniform, or previously in uniform, when you really think about those 4 focus areas, there's nothing we don't do in the profession of arms that doesn't fall within those 4 focus areas. Whether it comes to strengthen the profession, which is really the foundation of all of them, to the warfighting focus, which is we exist to fight and win. There's no but anything after that. If that goes away, then we don't need the Army that we know that we need. And so the beginning of that journey was really 2 May, the first time I looked at those, and I was asked my opinion on them, and I loved them. I said, "Sir, there's nothing. We don't need to change anything in those 4 focus areas. That's the bread and butter of why we exist. We focus on those. There's no doubt in my mind that the Army of 2030, or whatever year we want to put on that as we look forward, I guarantee we'll be the Army we need to be."
So let's go out to the audience, Sergeant Major, for some questions.
I'd love
We
to.
have some questions out there from either our media or our soldiers. Plenty of soldiers out there to ask questions. So who has our first question from the audience today? Good. We'll get you a microphone there.
I think that's a young sergeant from the old guard. I think he lives in my neighborhood.
So, Sergeant Major, first of all, good morning. The only question I had was bring up soldier housing. I know it's been quite a problem over the recent years, getting soldiers into better housing. I was just kind of wondering what the timeline, or at least the the plan going forward is to better these soldiers' experiences, both in their own houses and what they can expect going into the future.
Yeah, really good question. Definitely was a focus area for us in this most recent quality of life panel that we testified at in January with the House. So I'm gonna answer it in the housing, but I'm also gonna touch on unaccompanied barracks, unaccompanied housing, right? Because knowing that you're an E5 right now in the old guard, I have a feeling you're referencing both. And so I would say family housing, and SMA Daly remembers some of this because it was part of his journey before SMA Grinston took over. We've come a long way in our privatized housing efforts and where we are right now, a long way. And the updated Tenant Bill of Rights and Secretary Wormuth is pretty focused on making sure that we upkeep that Tenant Bill of Rights, and we hold the contractors that we have the privatized housing with, we hold them accountable. And frankly, they're doing a much better job. But that's been a journey. Now, unaccompanied housing, we've got some work to do there. We really do. And knowing that you're from Henderson Meier, you're from Fort Myer, again, in my neighborhood, you're living this right now. This is a tough spot. COVID didn't help us. Again, I don't like to give COVID a lot of credit, but we're still feeling the pain of finishing all the barracks, the dining facility, the gym renovation, all those things that the old guard's dealing with right now. They've all been slid to the right, and the Corps of Engineers doing everything they can to try to get those things back in alignment so that your young soldiers in your squad actually don't do an entire tour at the old guard living in, I think the Marine Corps is in the temporary. It almost looks like Bagram, to be honest with you. For those of us that remember Afghanistan.
Bagram was pretty nice, though. It wasn't bad.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that.
Yeah.
I didn't say that. I can't always use our experience because we're old.
That's right.
But I acknowledge that. Actually, just recently had a meeting as recently as yesterday on all things construction at our installation, because that is in our backyard, and so that matters to me. But that's actually going on in a lot of garrisons, camp posts, and stations. And so I know my wife and I travel quite a bit. I'm very fortunate to be able to take her with me. And everywhere we go, we're at Jaber, we're at Wainwright, Cavazos here not too long ago. She's actually engaging with all those family members to ensure that the housing situation is where it should be. And if there's something we need to know about, we bring it back to the Pentagon and we get after it. And then I don't go anywhere without going to barracks. But fiscally, I have to throw this one out there, so forgive me, but it's a real thing. We're struggling to get after this without predictable funding. And this is where we need congressional help. It's a massive infrastructure problem, whether it's sustainment or new MILCON, and without predictable funding, makes it extra tough for us. And I know as an E5, that doesn't mean a whole lot to you right now. It will as you progress as a non-commissioned officer, but there's a lot of folks in the room know what I'm referencing.
Let's stay on topic for a minute. And you mentioned earlier, a couple of weeks ago, you testified to Congress. I'd encourage you, if you haven't watched that, watch it, because you get to really see what our senior enlisted advisors advocate for to our elected leaders up on the Hill. But one of the things that I know is near and dear to the heart of every soldier in this room, whether you're a private through general, is paying compensation. I bet you can't go anywhere without a question about paying compensation, SMA. I'm quite confident. So
There's a tendency to come up.
Comes up from time to time. Could you talk about some of the things that you and the other senior enlisted advisors or the other services are working in that realm, in the paying compensation realm?
Okay, so this is a big one, right? What I'm learning, because it does come up often, is there's some education that even I needed in this space, right? You wake up and you're the SMA, and all of a sudden you're responsible for about 1 million plus people and all their families and all 3 compos, because we're a total army, and it all of a sudden I'm continuing to learn in this space. And the quadrennial review that happens every 4 years for the president, OSD is responsible for for running the quadrennial review that takes a hard look at all our pay and compensations. We're just about in 18-month mark of that 2-year process for that report. And again, I don't want to get out ahead of that report, but it's important for everybody because with the information space we're in nowadays, everybody learns about things so much faster. I think it's important for us as Army senior leaders to make sure we're messaging correctly. I really get frustrated when people learn things from TikTok, or actually rather they learn things from us. And so I'm pretty proud of where we are in that space. And so the quadrennial review, I recommend you take a look at it. It's ongoing. It has about 6 months left to finish its 2-year assessment. Taking a look at junior enlisted pay, that's E6 and below, and then taking a look at senior enlisted pay, which is E7 and above. And it's taking the base pay table and actually looking at a comparison to civilian pay. Now that's hard to do. It's, I mean, if you're an 18th Airborne Corps, how do you compare being a machine gunner to, somebody with a high school diploma that, is a carpenter? It's a really tough challenge. And so I'm learning a lot on how the process works for the quadrennial review. But that'll be coming out. That report will be due to Congress, and then we'll see what's going on there. The second piece to that is all other incentives outside of base pay, your BAS, your BAH, everything else comes from the service. So whether it's SDAP, AIP, I know there's a lot of acronyms, but folks in the room, this is a military friendly, those are usually incentive pays or skill pays. Those actually come from us, from the service. They don't actually come, Congress doesn't have anything to do with those. And so we're taking a look at those holistically also. But I think it's important for all the uniformed folks in the room to remember it's all the same checkbook. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring that up because the chief is pretty passionate about right now reminding everybody the dollar we want for a motor pool, the dollar we want for the barracks, the dollar we want for the new Warrior dining facility, or the next gen squad weapon that we're producing, it's all the same checkbook. And with zero growth in our budgets and back to our ability to have predictable funding, it's really a wicked problem right now. And I hate ending on that, but it's real. And I feel obligated to let you know that.
Excellent. Let's go back out to our audience there. I know we got another question in the room. Yes, ma'am.
Anybody?
Right there.
Please, go ahead, stand back up. You're good.
Good morning, SMA. So I'm First Class Dalcota here with the reserves. I currently serve as a brigade SARC, and I'm kind of wondering what type of priority you're making in the SHARP program, and where do you see the future of it's going with it transitioning to a civilian base?
Well, I think the first thing I need to address on that is it hasn't changed in a priority at all. It's always a priority. I think that's first and foremost. In the transition to the civilian base, I think just really goes to show you how much of a priority it is, right? There was a concern that the chain of commands being involved and all that, and so they wanted to remove any of that. And so what you're seeing with the independent programs that are going to be at instant installation, IPAGs as we know them, you're seeing it become even more of a priority, right? And so the credibility of the program, I think, is what you're referencing. I think it's going to only increase. But as far as a priority, it's a priority. It's on any of that behavior is unacceptable. That is the opposite of anything cohesive. And I think that needs to be said, in all caps, if you can do that now in text threads, my girl's always like, why are you screaming? And I'm like, well, I just wanted to make sure that you understood what I was getting at. That would be in all caps, unacceptable behavior. But it's not changing as a priority. I'm encouraged, but we're going to have to see. We're going to have to see. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I think we'll be in a good place.
I know we had another question back. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Sergeant Major of the Army. I have 2 questions. I have a rare opportunity to serve in 2 different phases within force development. On the early side as a senior drill sergeant for the reserves, we get to kind of shape the trainees that are coming in. And then on the back end of it, as a strategic advisor for US Cybercom, as a civilian, we get to shape the future of where that leads. So the first question is, for the early development, what do you want our trainees to take away from the drill sergeants as they're coming out of basic combat training? And then on the back of it, what do you hope that the training evolves into in contribution of technology and the informational environment?
Whew, there's a lot there.
Well, there you go, Sergeant Major.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll tackle it. Those are good. Those are really good. Keep me under control here. On the first one, I'm pretty proud of how we've evolved the drill sergeants. And again, you heard my bio. So on the fourth generation side of the house in the conventional Army, I don't have a lot of touch points. But within the Special Warfare Center in school, and then having been a instructor in what our operator training course was in an organization I was at, I know the value and the importance of it. First impressions are everything. You oftentimes don't get a second opportunity to have that first impression. That's not an absolute. I've had some good leaders come after some not so great leaders and been able to have the opposite effect on some of that. But the drill sergeant's everything. And so I will tell you that between the spirit of the bayonet, between Tradoc CSM would be so mad at me right now. Forge 2.0, there we go. I just redeemed myself. Forge 2.0 that's going on down at Fort Jackson is where we really look. I couldn't be more proud of what the drill sergeants are doing. We got rid of the initial craziness, and the drill sergeants are human beings again, but human beings that have a purpose and are stern when they need to be stern. They're actually taking their, you know this, but this is for the break. They're taking their brown rounds off, putting their PCs on, and being a squad leader or a platoon sergeant towards the end of basic to get them ready for what a real relationship's supposed to be like with your squad leader when they go to their first duty assignment. I mean, there's a lot of goodness that's happening right now on the front end. Really proud of what Tradoc's done there. It really speaks to the strength in the profession at the very beginning, right? Demonstrate and model what right looks like. Now, flip side, on the tech and innovation side, I'm a bit of a techie. But I never want ChatGPT making a decision for me. I am a huge advocate for the human in the loop, the human decision maker always in the loop. I love data. We are data-centric organization. I'm usually questioning where the data came from and the validity of the data, because we've swung so far to the right now of wanting data-informed decision-making for everything. So now we're really scrutinizing the data, because if we're going to do that, it's got to be trustworthy data. And so I will tell you, I'm all for it, but we're really increasing, and the chief is really passionate about this. I love it. Education. And some of it's actually for more senior people. How about that? I'll just point to myself, Dan. I looked at you, but I pointed to myself. So we have, battalion and brigade level and division level that really have a little less education in this space than we have the company and the platoon and even in the squad, just based off generations. The new generation's just super savvy with this. My daughter was here right now. She could give us a class on ChatGPT and everything else. I didn't even know. I don't know. I don't have an account. I'm behind. And so education, I think, is a big one for leaders to know how to leverage it. Because I think some of these youngsters we're bringing in feel like sometimes their great ideas in this space may just kind of hit a ceiling and never go any further. Because the best innovation does come from the bottom up. But the middle level of leadership needs to know what to do with that. And so I'm happy with where we're going in this space, but we're at a bit of a milestone with trying to marry those things up. And so we've got some executive data courses, some just really trying to increase our education, because I think that might be the gap right now. And I can't blame the younger generation. They're actually really savvy on this. There you go. It's my best. There's my best shot at those two questions.
Before we go back out, so let's stay in that space for a minute.
Okay.
One of the questions that you answered during testimony, SMA, was the future soldier prep course. Can you tell us real quickly how we're doing?
Yeah.
And I'll ask the same question the congressman asked you. Are we going to expand that in the future?
Yeah. So we're doing well. I'm pretty proud of that program. The reason I'm proud of it is because we stood our ground, and this was SMA Grinston and General McConville and Secretary Wormuth. We're not going to modify standards. We know the standard that works, but we had to come up with a solution to meet America where the American young population is, right? And so that's future soldier prep. It's like, okay, I've got youngsters that intrinsically want to serve, back to the call to service. Well, heck, I've got time for that. We should have time for that. That's a big deal. But your ASVAB score is a little low, or you're struggling a little bit with, body composition. And so we did what the Army does, just like we did in COVID, is we met the requirement and we surged. And again, I give TRADOC huge shout out for this. We're at 14, actually, I don't know, I'm a little dated based off of the data I had for testimony, but we're 14,300 plus folks now that have been through future soldier prep course. The data that I'm really waiting for is 1 to 2 year enlistment time at first duty station. That, I think, is the data that would really, before we completely celebrate. But I'll tell you what we're finding back to our drill sergeant, our former drill sergeant down there. Guess who the drill sergeants at basic are putting in charge as squad leaders and platoon guides? The soldiers that came out of future soldier prep, because they left Fort Jackson having a foundation based off modeled behavior while they were working to get their test scores and everything back up. They had to, peer leadership. You got to have organization, and they're sliding them right in, and they're crushing it at basic training in AIT. And so I do think that's a really good data point. And then I'm really looking for, post 1 year, where are we at? How are these soldiers doing? If I can, though, there's a story I tell. I don't know. Did I tell it?
You can estimate. You're the
Did
sergeant.
I tell this at testimony? I don't know if I did or not. We had 6 of us up there, and everybody was jockeying for time. But the bottom, it really sums up what we're doing at this young future soldier. I'd love to know where she is right now. But I think some of those soldiers just need to be soldiers. Let them be soldiers. She stood up in the sawdust pit. We had, 60, 80 of them in the sawdust pit. And I was with General Braga at the time. And this was the first 6 months of the initial pilot. And she stood up, and she was pretty shy. We were asking, hey, well, how's your experience been? What do you think of all this? And she stood up and literally said, with her head down, this is the first time anybody's ever cared about me. And I was like, wow. Okay. We met America where they're at. And that's why I'm really curious to know where she is right now and what she's doing. But that was really telling to me. We met those youngsters where they're at. They needed some coach, teach, mentoring going on, just somebody to care about them and help them. And they want to serve. And so we have the ability to expand it. But USAREC, we're not expanding it until we have the demand from USAREC to expand it. Yeah. And so the secretary and the chief are on standby, ready to increase if the demand's there for those candidates.
So you did tell that story, and that's the
Did I tell that
powerful
one?
message that I
Sorry.
wanted them to hear today.
It
Yeah.
all blurs.
Yeah. Let's go back out to the audience. I know there was a few folks that had questions.
Sergeant Majors, Connor Crehan, Unite Us, proud Army veteran. Going back to the quality of life conversation, I recently read an article, about the garrison commander at Cavazos brokering a partnership with MFAM to provide food vouchers to soldiers and their families PCSing to Cavazos for 3 months, which I think is fantastic to help ease that transition. Now, at the end of those 3 months, that E5, his or her pay hasn't changed, and they still have 3 mouths to feed. So my question is, are you exploring any additional partnerships with a little bit more longevity And in addition to that, any partnerships that might encompass the full breadth of social needs of soldiers and their families. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah. Food security. Yeah, I was very intentional with the term I used because I don't like food insecurity. I mean, we've got some stuff we got to work on. Cavazos, I give Lieutenant General Benabi and CSM McDwyer. I give them some kudos here. They've been working this problem pretty hard for about a year now. Our traditional feeding methods within garrison, they're just not working like they did in the past. I'm looking around at some folks in the room that remember every battalion had their own dining facility. It was inside the battalion space. You walked there. It was, you just went to your battalion cooks and said, hey, we're going to be out on the range all next month at X, Y, and Z at the training meeting. And you had mermics delivered. And it's a very different world right now. And then on the family side of the house, to your point, I think inflation it was 2.5, 3 years ago when we saw the inflation spike is where we saw the married families with dependents struggle. JBLM pops to mind because the cost outside the installation there was incredibly impactful to our soldiers. I don't know exactly if there's a silver bullet to answer your question. There's one decision, one policy change, one congressional solution. I don't know. I think it's going to be the sum of all the tools. And this is why I say that. And this is part of, deliver and ready combat forces back to, our second focus area. Garrison command teams and the chief, I really appreciate how passionate the chief is about this. Garrison command teams at each one of those locations needs to understand the requirements for that location and all the soldiers and family members at that location. And if you've been to one, you've been to one. You really have, right? If you've been to Wainwright, that's a whole nother animal right now in the month of February. That's you almost like you're on a planet. If you've been to Cavazos, how distributed it is, it's almost like two separate cities. The team down there is trying to really figure out public transportation. How do I get public transportation? I can't even get soldiers to the food that they have, quality food. And now they're struggling with that because we have such a large percentage of soldiers that don't even come in the Army with driver's licenses anymore. So we're trying to figure that out. And so I think it's really important for us to know that there'll be a toolbox of solutions, and the senior mission command teams at each one of those locations needs to have access, resources, and be empowered to be able to leverage whatever tools those are for their installation. But it is a challenging issue for us right now.
Thanks, SMA. I know we got time for a few more questions, right? So we'll go to our retired population. Sergeant Major.
Thank you very much. Well, just a caveat to what you said, when I was a drill sergeant, the mess hall was 1 mile and 1/10 away. So we would run them. We had a lot of slim, trim soldiers, but they didn't like it because on the weekend they could elect to stay in the barracks and not go eat. But my question today is about the recruiting in the Army. And what you wind up with is you have a base down here that's very empty, and you have up here your NCOs and senior leaders who are overpopulated. So the question I have is up or out going to continue? Because that would help you with you retaining some of your younger, or not younger, but junior soldiers. Because some people just want to be a truck driver. And when you say, no, you got to be a staff sergeant and look after the motor pool, they don't want to do that. They just rather drive the truck. So to me, it's a viable program, but the Army said back in the 80s, hey, get promoted or get out. So I don't know if you considered that, but one other thing I'll say is when I was in E5, I got pro pay as an artilleryman. It was only $30 a month. It wasn't much, but by the same token, I met the test and I knew that I was proficient in my MOS. So I don't know if you've considered giving pro pay to other MOSs, but it might be an incentive. So
yeah,
Before you go, Sergeant Major, $30 a month when you were in could buy a Cadillac, though. That's right.
It would also fill 2 grocery carts at the commissary.
That's right. That's right. Go ahead, Esme.
Yeah. I had to remind myself the other day, we have 2 young adults now. I don't know, it makes me feel old saying that, but we have 2 young seasoned. We're seasoned. That's right. This is on the record. We're seasoned, not old. Wise, I think somebody said. But it was pretty simple when I joined the Army. It was pretty simple. I had a $500 beater truck that I paid cash for that I could change the alternator on. I could do anything on. I didn't even need a mechanic. And I needed insurance. And then whatever my curricular activities were. There was no Hulu, there was no Peacock, there was no Fubo, there were no cell phones, there was no unlimited data plans, there was no, the list goes on and on and on. And society-wise, those are all almost requirements for even our daughters. There's no Netflix, there's no nothing. It was really simple. It kind of factors into a lot of the quality of life stuff. It even goes back to your question about at Cavazos with the vouchers, because again, financial education, we're really pushing financial education. But when you do the 1 to N list on everything that a family thinks they need, we were the unpopular ones that we said, hey, none of our girls are getting an iPhone until you're 14? I don't even remember. And our kids were the only ones without iPhones, right? And so, those are societal norms. Those are new, back to the basic pay and all that. That really matters. And as a seasoned person, I have to remind myself that because what was right in 93 isn't necessarily right in 2024. So I think I just need to say that to be fair. Recruiting. Okay, retention control points. You basically went to RCPs is what you're talking about, up and out. I will tell you, again, I'm never going to get out, never intentionally get out in front of my secretary or my chief. But I think it's safe for me to tell you, we're looking at everything. We are absolutely looking at everything. I don't think we could ever completely change an up and out model for all MOSs. The Army's massive. And I go back to, it's the same budget for everything, right? And so every time we invest in our people, I'm kind of a fan of investing in our people. It is definitely our asymmetric advantage. You can just watch what's happening in Ukraine right now. No non-commissioned officer corps. You can see where the PRC is focusing on. No non-commissioned officer corps. So I'll leave that one alone right there. That is our secret sauce. I do believe that, and that's not just because I'm a non-commissioned officer. We've got to figure out those specialty, high skill set, low density MOSs. How do we retain those? So, cyber was mentioned earlier. How do you maintain those cyber warriors? Because they're warriors. How do you maintain that when they're in such demand in the civilian community also? We develop them and invest them, and then how do you retain them? And once they really get good, we tell them, hey, you need to stop doing that. You need to go be a leader because you're never going to get promoted if you don't. Now we're back to base pay and I need vouchers. And meanwhile, I've got all these opportunities in the civilian world. So the answer is there's nothing off the table. What can we control internally as a service? And then where do we need OSD's help? Because there's certain things that all services have to agree to, back to quadrennial review. And then there's congressional piece to it. And we're looking at all that.
We got time for one more, Mark? I think so. Okay. Yeah.
Good morning, SMA.
Good morning.
Sergeant First Class Schmid, 704th Military Intelligence Brigade. My question is, with the change in messaging from people first to standards and discipline, a lot can be lost as it trickles out across the force. So what is the primary message that you want soldiers to receive with regards to that? And relatedly, will there be a change to the This Is My Squad initiative as a part of that?
Good question. I'll start from the This Is My Squad piece, Tim's. No, absolutely not. I mean, that is in doctrine. And that is outstanding. I give SMA Grinson again 2 thumbs up on that. That is the epitome of what it means to be cohesive, right? I mean, that there's goodness in that. And then working my way backwards, I will tell you, people have always mattered. You cannot be the warfighter you think you are if you don't care about your family and your teammates along the way. And so the focus areas, that's why I go back to there's nothing you can't bend underneath those focus areas. Delivering combat ready formations. I talked about garrisons and how we take care of our people in garrisons, right? That falls under that focus area, right? Because we're not ready to fight and win tonight, tomorrow, or in 2030 if we're not taking care of our people. And so I think there's and again, I'm 7 months in the position. I think it'll take a little bit of time. Change is slow. That's okay. Change is actually good also. We don't change just to change. Continuous transformation. The continuous part is actually maybe the more important part of the 2 words. We should never wait 10 more years to transform. We should always be transforming to keep up. The goal is to always say near peer, never lose the term near. That means we have to continually transform and continually stay ahead of our adversaries. But people have always mattered. That's why it's Team Weimer in our house. I'm very, very forthcoming with that. This is a family profession. I'm an Army brat. I can say that with confidence. And then again, our daughter's doing, she wants to follow the same career path. Based off of our life, she should actually want to do something else. Honest. I mean, we got married 1 September 2001, and my pager went off 10 days later, and we haven't stopped since. And both our girls are 21 and 19. You can throw all that together in the algorithm and figure out what those girls have experienced in their life. They should want to do anything but join the Army based off the stressors but this is a special thing. This profession is special. It's unique. And so that's why I start with the call to service. Then there's all kinds of other opportunities for you. But I think we got some work to do with just making sure people know that they matter. And I'll finish it with this. You get judged by our video, not our audio. And as a leader, you know that already. But for the younger folks in the room, I encourage you to know that as early as possible. You're going to get judged by your video, not your audio. And your video, MOEs and MOPs, for the more senior folks in the room, measures of effectiveness and performance, will be held up to what you said you were going to do. And that's why barracks does matter. That's why testimony matters so much, and all the quality of life stuff. Yeah, so people matter. You're not the warfighter you think you are if you don't value people at home and in the office. I hope that answers that for you.
There we go. Do we have one more? Do we have time for one more? Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Oh,
SMA.
this may be the hardest question of
You know I had to. You know I had to. Julie Guerra, Director of NCO and Soldier Programs here at AUSA. So my question, kind of to button it up with call to service, is you talked about that our communities are not connected with us. 29 years, 13 moves, I never felt connected to a community where I was stationed. And I feel like our communities, to your point, don't know who we are. So how or what initiatives are you and the chief and the secretary looking at to connect what it is that we do for the Army and our communities and our service, and that we collectively as leaders and soldiers feel connected to that community as well?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one, Julie. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So I think I need to like just kind of defend a little bit. I think we've starting to turn the corner on this a little bit. Now, if this was, there's somebody in the room who's working a recruit task force for us for a little while, so she's well aware of where I'm going with this. if I rewind to 2 years ago, back when you were still in uniform and we were talking about recruiting, I would agree 100% with you. But in this past 2 years, we have seen the garrisons come out in force to support this call to service and to support the recruiting mission. And so I actually think we're doing much better in the local communities outside our garrisons, camp posts, and stations. I really do. As a matter of fact, there's some command teams that would be upset if I didn't defend them a little bit. 10th Mountain, 4th ID, 18th Airborne Corps. I mean, they are all hands on deck and responded well to all the Army initiatives. I think the next step, what we're working on now, is that next, I don't want to use rings, but if you kind of think about visually, it's getting further and further away. And that's where Army marketing comes in. That's where our regional marketing and campaign efforts, what I'll use Fort Liberty. Fayetteville, they know their Army. Fayetteville, North Carolina knows their Army. What about Charlotte? What about Wilmington? What about, pick your other if you're North Carolina. And then if you're at, your 4th ID, Colorado Springs knows their Army. But then pick your next major city that's 100 miles away. That's where I think we got to get to next. And that's where we're leveraging technology. That's where we're going to have to, because again, 4th ID, 82nd Airborne, they kind of have a day job. And so we only still have the same amount of time in the day, the week, the training calendar, et cetera. And so we had to prioritize them away from something else to surge to this, because it was the priority. So that's how I would answer that. Recruiting Command right now has got some pretty good initiatives getting ready to go. They've gotten quite a bit of help, and marketing. Now marketing is going to fall directly underneath Recruiting Command. Those things are super nested. Pretty proud of those decisions that the Army senior leadership made. So I think we're in a good spot, but that's our next journey. How do we get that out past 25 miles outside the ECP?
Thanks, SMA. Well, that's all the time we have today, SMA. I just want to tell you, we are blessed to have his leadership along with the Secretary and the Chief, the helm of our Army. And we appreciate you taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedule. I know firsthand how busy you are to come out here and speak to our soldiers here at the Coffee Series. So let's give the 17th SMA a big round of applause. Now, before we go, I got some announcements for upcoming events, ladies and gentlemen. So actually tune in for our next noon report with Command Sergeant Major Andrew Lombardo on 6 March, the Sergeant Major for United States Army Reserve. Our next coffee series will be 13 March with the Army Material Command Commander, General Charles Hamilton. And tune in and go to our website to register for Global Force. 26 to 28 March, Huntsville, Alabama. Great place to be during the spring. Head on down there to Huntsville. And if you need a good reason to go to Hawaii, we got a show for you down there too in May. And that registration and links are open today on our website. So please find a good reason to take you and your spouse down to Hawaii and join us for LAMPAC 2024, 16 through 18 May. I think I got those dates right.
I'll be at both of those. I'll be down at Redstone and I'll be
there you
out
go.
at
Hey, the
LAMPAC.
SMA's coming to it.
There
It's a
you
big
go.
deal. It's a big deal. All right. And now don't forget to membership matters, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're not a member, especially if you're wearing that uniform, I can say it now because one of the most important things that our president did for membership last October was he made it free. So now you have absolutely no excuse, soldiers, to go out there and see a gentleman named Mr. Tripp. Sign up for membership because your membership matters. As we represent your Army on Capitol Hill and throughout the communities, through our 122 chapters and our 7 regions around the globe, your presence is felt by all those people that work hard behind the scenes for you. Lastly, I want to thank our sponsors again, General Dynamics and Leonardo DNS, and our 2-star sponsors, Leidos and Northrop Grumman, for your outstanding support. We simply couldn't do these things without you. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great day. And SMA, thanks again for being here this morning. And thanks for being our Sergeant Major of the Army.
Thank you.